Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk. We're here and we're going to do a bit of a chronograph special. I am joined by Kris. Kris, how have you been?
Excellent.
Should we do a bit of a wristwatch check? What are you? Well, I'll go first because I think we're gonna spill into yours. I must admit I've got my Garmin on. If anybody's been watching the live stream, I keep not accidentally, but I keep leaving my Garmin on because I'm wearing it all the time. I'm like addicted to monitoring my heart rate now.
Your steps, getting your steps.
Yeah, exactly. So I know this is audio, so I could have lied and said that I'm wearing my Datejust, but I always have to be honest. I am wearing a little Garmin because I have got rid of most of my other watches, but I've definitely got my eye on something new, which we'll talk about.
And now, at this point, like, do you think it's affected your, like, are you getting better sleep? Are you working out better? Are you walking more? Accidental exercise? Do you think you're changing lifestyles? Or you just...
Yeah, this is a great question because I was most interested in monitoring my sleep because I'm a super light sleeper. Mm-hmm. So things will wake me up in the night. I'm not one of those people that could, sleep through like a thunderstorm or whatever. I definitely would wake up, and my wife is also quite a light sleeper as well. So we often kind of sometimes wake each other up. And the stats are showing that. I don't know how to properly read it, but I actually only spend like an hour in deep sleep. I can't work out whether that's okay or not, but I'm definitely light sleeping the most.
I feel, I think like, so it's an hour of deep. Yeah, I think there's some online comparative stats. I think an hour is certainly light, but for me it's the light. Like, it has to be like, not usually, sounds don't usually wake me up. Definitely been woken up by an earthquake one time, which was fun because I thought, I'm like, stop shaking the bed.
Yeah, that's fun.
She's like, I'm not shaking the bed. And I was like, but I wouldn't describe myself as a light sleeper. But as far as like, the room has to be a cave. Like, if there is a single point of light, I just can't do it. It's got to be super, super dark. So that's one thing for me. But I did some sleep tracking back in the day with the Fitbit, and which was kind of a pain because you had to, like, it was one of those ones that you like clipped onto your belt, but then it had like a special like neoprene Velcro band or whatever that you like strapped to your wrist, and like super uncomfortable. I seem to remember it being like, you got an hour and 45 minutes out of your 5 hours of actual sleep, even though you tried to get a full night's sleep.
Yeah, it's the good thing with the Garmin is the app is really good. Like, their app side of it that syncs with the watch is it visually looks really good, and it does. And it's one of those things where I definitely have an Apple computer and an Apple phone. I got this Garmin because it looks like a G-Shock. It looks like a G-Shock, and it's only got a black and white screen.
Right.
So I feel I'm sort of telling myself that it's not the full smartwatch. Like, I've not fully gone down the rabbit hole yet because I've not got an Apple Watch.
Yeah, you don't have your Apple Watch Sport, and you're not. But the app is important. I mean, as far as like taking that data, because that really is the difference, I think a lot of people, we judge watches on the contents in your hand. And for the smartwatches, if you have no way to interpret any of that data, then it's going to be, and I've seen cheaper Asian like knockoff smartwatches, but their apps are so bad. You're like, well, yeah, I can't. It doesn't tell me, like, it just gives me a number for sleep. It doesn't show me a nice graph, or like, it doesn't give me actionable information.
Yeah, so. I totally agree, and I do like it when we go, to the gym and stuff like that. And I mean, I haven't set myself any goals that I'm tracking with the watch at the moment. I'm just still in the graphs look cool kind of stage.
Okay. Yeah. Gonna get challenges going. Challenges.
Yeah, exactly. Well, should we? What are you wearing? More importantly, you're wearing a proper watch, hopefully.
Yeah, in my completely non-smartwatch. I have my Bell & Ross 10th anniversary chronograph on.
Oh, nice.
And I thought about taking this watch on vacation, and I was too scared, and I shouldn't have been.
Really?
And yeah, I don't know. I had this like this is my first time. It was my first time in Europe. It was first time traveling like super abroad. And so you have some indication of what's going to happen, but it's based on the travel YouTube channels that you've watched and the scary stories that people have told, like, oh, you're going to, you're going to be in Naples and someone's going to come upon you, or you're going to be in Rome and, there's roving gangs or whatever. Right. And so when I was picking what watches to take, I was a lot more conservative because I was like, I'm going to have this on my wrist most of the time. I won't be sad if I lose this. And this will be in an emergency. Like those are, so I had my everyday GMT. I brought my Zinn 104 white dial, which I enjoyed more than I thought I would. Great, like beach, like summer watch. Awesome. And then a G-Shock Solar, which was like, we have to escape the country. These like crazy ideas that you have again, because everything about it, you've just watched from 5, YouTube channels of various like, what this is going to be like. And the whole time I was thinking about this chronograph, and I was like, I should have brought this. And we're getting into fall, and I was like, I gotta get on a nice leather strap. And it turns out I had the original Zinn 20 millimeter strap for the 104. It's like that. If you've ever seen the original Zinn OEM straps, it's got that like, I don't know, 5 mil thick leather. It's, that it's
like padded, is it? Or
I just think I don't even think it's padded. I just think it's just thick. It's just thick, and it's like a new baseball glove. Like you gotta work this thing. So I mean, like I had to like put a curve in it in order so that it would just like not hurt my wrist. But I was like, I gotta break this strap in, and I think it looks great on this watch. This like dark brown with the chronograph.
Yeah, I like brown straps, on watches. I prefer it over like black leather. I prefer the brown, sort of more chestnutty or like chocolatey brown.
Yeah, this watch came on a crocodile leather, and I don't know how I feel about this, but like crocodile's banned now in California, and so we can't, or alligator crocodile, we can't, and I don't think Florida is running out of them, but okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna stir up too much trouble there. And I wouldn't really like, I wouldn't know. There are some people that they can spot the difference between like a vegetable leather or a
like
organic
embossed,
leather.
like a alligator embossed calf leather,
where someone would be like, oh, I can like immediately tell, and you're like, oh, I can't stand it, that kind of thing. That's not me, so it doesn't really matter. I think it looks sharp, but it's a little too dressy, and it is the original band, and I don't want to like destroy it. So yeah, I've been trying to stuff, and so we're getting into cooler weather. So yeah, breaking out the leather bands. I have a leather NATO that this sometimes goes on too. So
yeah, I never really got on with leather NATOs. They look cool. There's a few films where they wear, or certainly some video games actually that I've been playing. Oh, I said video games. I sound like an old person. I've been playing some games. I was playing like Call of Duty Cold War game, which it does have. It's a shame those Call of Duty games because their campaigns are usually really good, but they're super short. But it's basically set in Vietnam, and it's set in the 80s. And the 80s version of it, they have field watches with leather.
Oh, that's great.
Leather NATOs on them. It looks really cool. Marathon watches make really good leather NATOs as well, and Barton do one if you like that more. Yeah, supple leather.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I'll check them out because they're and on some it does certainly depends on the thickness. Sometimes they have to be super thin, and there are some watches that have a short lug length, like my Bell and Ross GMT. The gap between the case and the lugs is maybe 3 millimeters, maybe, and so trying to squeeze a thick leather NATO through there is not going to happen.
And you need a strong pair of spring bars as well,
right?
For leather NATO. Also Walbrook, the skin diver that I got, that had a fantastic leather NATO with it, and one that I got a bit obsessed with it when I saw it was the Artisans de Genève collaboration they did with Spike Lee, the Cool Hand Brooklyn Daytona that they did for him, where they basically took a Daytona and I think it had a blue dial on it, and they replaced the pushes. It looked awesome, but that one came on an alligator NATO, which they're almost impossible to find. And I asked Mikola at Man Cave Leather if it was possible to make one, and he was saying, well, it's hard to get that length, that one run piece of alligator. You basically got to cut down the center of the
because it's got to be it's got to be like 17 inches to start with,
Well, and it double backs on itself.
Exactly.
Stuff,
So it's got to be super long in the beginning.
Yeah, so they obviously, and it was like a blue sort of tanned alligator thing, and it really did look awesome. In fact, he has made me not a NATO, but Mikola's made me an alligator strap, and it's funny because very rarely have I put it on a watch because it looks so nice. I'm it's one of those ridiculous. I've got it with notepads as well. If I find like a really nice notepad, I keep it for some imaginary time where I'm going to have I'm going to
write my
memoirs in it. Or something.
I'm going to start my book in this.
Exactly.
in this first page. I totally get you. I have a leather bound tablet cover that only worked with my old Google tablet, and I'm kind of sad that I can't use it for. I was like, I gotta use it for something else, and it just sits on the shelf, and you're like, someday I will put my memoirs or my new tablet in it, or.
Well, yeah, there's that gentleman that I did a review for, who makes, and I'll have to leave a link because I can't remember it off the top of my head now, but he makes watch straps out of other things that you have. So if you've got a favorite pair of cowboy boots or a favorite pair of shoes or a favorite, he does a lot with baseball gloves and things like that. So that's a really good
for
way.
Recycling. Yeah, that's cool.
I suppose it's good if you've got a baseball glove that you it's called the Strap Smith. Just a little plug for him. He did very kindly send me one of these baseball glove straps, and I actually sent it to Stephen, who sometimes comes on the live stream because he's a huge baseball fan. But it's the strapsmith.com, and he'll make straps out of any sort of leather.
So I need my Louis Vuitton NATO. Sounds good. I was
perfect, thinking your tablet case, your much beloved tablet case, could it be turned into a NATO?
Could it be? Yeah, maybe. or at least a nice watch strap.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the discussion today should firmly square around that something has happened this week where it's the week of awesome Quartz Chronograph watches. There's been at least 3 that have caught my eye, so I thought we could discuss them a little bit, and if you've not seen them, maybe I'll get your thoughts on them. But first up is I will say version 2 of the new speed timers. So obviously Seiko's had a speed timer since the 60s, but I bought the one last year that was sort of the resurgence of it, and I did love it. And I had it and I wore it a lot, but for me, I think it was a 38 or a 39, and it was just a little bit too small for me, for my taste. I wore it on a bund, which helped a lot, but they're bringing out a new version, and I think it looks awesome. They've bumped it up to a 41 millimeter, 41.1 millimeter.
That's such a sweet 40, and as like someone who has a bunch of chronographs, a 41 mil chronograph is like such a sweet spot. It's not. I mean, it's not too crazy, and it's a good size. It's definitely a good size.
Yeah, absolutely. So the colors vary a little bit. They've got a blue one, but it's not the same blue as the one I had, and they've got a black one, but the tachyometer has a red section to it. The first quarter of it is red, and then my absolute favorite, which is very rarely I say this about a silver dialed watch, because for some reason I don't gravitate to dials that are silver, but the SSC, so Sierra Charlie 911 is a silver dial version. So it's silver dial, and then it's sort of like a reverse panda. So it's got the not the reverse panda. That's the panda.
Regular panda. regular panda. Yep.
Regular, fully the non-diet panda. And so they're using the VK Mecha Quartz, which, as you know, or both of us don't love that movement, but it does have the continuous running seconds. It still has the ridiculous 24-hour indicator on it.
I know, I want to go into the watch every time. The blue, little more Pepsi than the last one.
It looks a little, obviously Seiko can't take a good picture of a watch to save their life. So I'm sure that it looks like a cheaper chronograph on here than the one that I had that was blue, that was a real sort of bluey purple, really sophisticated.
Yeah, really rich. Yeah, it was a really rich blue. And what's interesting too is the dial here, like the close up, the dial doesn't look exactly like the blue for the bezel. And like you said, you're gonna have to see it in person. I can't, I can't quite tell, because it looks like a super deep blue, and the bezel, like the way they took this with the light, it doesn't quite look like the same color temperature blue. But
you're right. Yeah, it definitely looks like there's a difference. It's obviously, I mean, it's very clearly it looks like an aluminium insert there, doesn't it? It doesn't look like it's a ceramic.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong. I think it looks great. I like it.
It still has the bracelet that the previous speed timer had, which there's like Terry on the Facebook group who has the gold one, and I wish they'd made a gold version of this one, because I wish, because I think I would be brave this time in getting the gold one, but maybe they'll bring it out. But it still has that bracelet on it, which I know, like Terry on the Facebook group, he really likes it, but I just didn't find it comfortable.
Didn't find it work.
It's only got 2 positions of micro adjustment.
Oh yeah.
So it but it's very well machined. It's definitely a step up from
like a turtle bracelet or like a standard like Seiko 5 bracelet.
Yeah, obviously. Exactly. And the clasp, even though it is small, is fully machined. It feels like a nice product, the bracelet. It's just I found it uncomfortable. But these watches look so good on any other strap. So that was the the
super sharp. What are these going for? 700?
So it's saying €700 here, but there's a couple of places I've seen with US pricing that is around 700, and I've actually asked the Seiko AD here, Orlando Watch Company. I've asked them whether they're getting one in, so at least I can see one, and I got my last one from there. And Seiko have got, if you sign on their website now, they're offering a coupon for 15% off, I think it is, or 10%. So I signed up for that.
Yay, watch companies taking advantage of e-commerce. Yay. Amazing. It's like pulling teeth. That's great.
Yeah, so I've signed up for that. Hopefully the coupon will last. I think it's going to be available in November, although Terry, again on the Facebook group, he said that his AD, this is in the UK, I'm in the US, but he said that his UK AD thought he might be getting them in tomorrow, or at least one, like a sample. Okay. So so
maybe they do right. Maybe they set expectations. They're like, everyone will have in November, and then like that means that has to ship today in order for November to happen.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the other thing with these speed timers, if you're not familiar, they have they're solar, and the solar cells are incorporated very cleverly, I think, into the chronograph subdials. I think that's a really cool use of the technology.
Yeah, you can tell a little bit, but it's very well done. It's very well done. So like they're not like the black subdials are not like truly black. They kind of have a little, I'd say red kind of tint to them. But yeah, super well done. And got the little corner date window, down in the corner there, at the 45.
Yeah, exactly, which I very much appreciate.
Yep. Cool.
Well, then next up, and on the Quartz Chronograph side again, is these. I think these have been out for a while, but I only learnt about them today. And this is Watch Gecko. They obviously own that Gekkota brand. I think that's how you pronounce it. But they have spun off another British brand called Forzo. So there's a Forzo G1, which is another quartz chronograph that again uses that mecha quartz, but the correct one that has the countdown, the continuous seconds.
Nice.
Okay. And I think they've done a absolutely fantastic job of this quartz. It's super retro. It's got a bracelet that's the Speedmaster, isn't it? Bracelet at one time.
Kind of look, yeah, that's right. And it looks the case like a 70s integrated, like squared off case, like similar to like the Omegas, kind of like a Zin 144 that like makes a sharp angle, and whatever bracelet you have will sort of look integrated. Kind of gives it that look.
Yeah, and they kind of Seiko missed a trick on that, I think, on their one, because the bracelet is different than the case. It almost looks like it's an aftermarket bracelet they put on the case.
Yeah, a little more, right. A little more like a presidential bracelet for the Seiko. And a little more, or even like an Omega, like a that rounded style. It does. You're right. It sort of gives a little like this could be an aftermarket bracelet on this, whereas the Forzo here, they have the date window correct, but they didn't orient the number horizontal.
Yeah, so it's we're probably gonna have to do we'll try and explain this, because of course the podcast is now audio only, but right. It's between the 4 and the 5, isn't it? And but the number is sort of side on. So here it's showing 8, but it obviously also it looks like it's infinity.
And this is just a nerd. This is like a watch nerd call out. So Bell and Ross do a round date window, but they orient the number, the date number horizontally in that window. And so I am super prejudiced to think that that's the right way to do it. So this is just watch nerd talk, is all that is.
Yeah, and this is on par with the Seiko. So they're running a sale where their Panda version is $600 US, but they do a red, a black, and a blue,
and so they have the reverse Panda, which is cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So black and white and black. Okay. Cool.
And then the blue, and then they've got a sort of a cheeky red.
The blue is nice. It reminds me of kind of the that Hamilton color blue.
Yeah, and
like the like a pan Europe color.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they've really nailed this sort of vintage racing aesthetic, which a lot of watches go for that, don't they? And very few of them hit that mark, I think. I think they have.
Yeah, this would look great on a Campeonato Club Martini strap for sure.
Oh yeah, little plug, Campeonato
little
Club.
plug, yeah.
Well, yeah, Christmas is coming up.
Get your watch straps for your racing chronographs for sure.
We'll leave a link in the description. And the other thing with this as well, as we're describing it, the tachymeter is on the inside, so it's not a separate bezel. It's a bezel-less watch, and the tachymeter's on the inside, which from the photos, the way that the sapphire is like almost, would you call that a top hat sapphire, or it's slightly beveled?
It's tough to say. Yeah, it's tough to see. I see a bevel. I wouldn't call it a top hat because it's not, it doesn't like literally rise up vertically and then like is rounded off. Is more, I would say that's a bevel. Yeah.
Yeah, so I bet you that tachymeter looks really cool because of that distortion with there.
Yeah. I appreciate more, I'm drawn to more of the watches that don't have a bezel on them, a rotating bezel on them, and have it sort of integrated. But every time I go looking, I end up going for the one that has the bezel, because it adds another feature, and I'm very in that tool watch, like, oh, I need one more, like if I can turn it to get the countdown timer or like another hour time zone, whatever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're going, I think these are two great chronographs, and we'll leave the links to these in the show notes. But you can look them up. This is the Forzo FRZOZO G1, and it's on the Watch Gecko site, which is just a fantastic site for getting watch straps as well. Like this is where I used to buy a lot of watch straps from. Even though the last two are good, like the Seiko definitely getting it, this Forzo I really like the look of it, but I think the absolute home run today is, for some reason, I don't know if Timex has hired a new designer, but the last month or so, they have been knocking out some incredible watches. That Pan Am one,
right?
That was a huge hit.
Yeah, that was when I saw this new one. That was the first thing I thought. I was like, wait, was it Timex that just did the Pan Am one? And then it was like, oh yeah, that's it. And I was like, they are knocking it out of the park for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the Q Timex, which is their vintage line, they've got some amazing versions that they've been doing. They did a gold cased one, but this one is, I believe they released it today, and I'm surprised it's not sold out. It's called the Q Timex Chronograph. It's a 40mm one, and it looks stunning. It's $200 on the strap, $219 on the bracelet. It's just, they've just done an absolute awesome job. They've captured this vintage racing aesthetic.
Right. I think it's like I with the price, and it's it reminds me of the last two, the Seiko and the last two that we looked at. So wow.
Yeah, and absolutely. And this again, this is just available on the Timex website. They've done a panda and then a reverse panda, and the one that comes on the bracelet, it looks, again, to your earlier point, it looks almost like this one is integrated in there, doesn't it? The lugs are hidden within the case.
Yeah, that triangle squared off lug design I think is back. We've got, because this is like, watch number 2, but I've seen this style's making a big comeback, where it looks like it's almost an integrated bracelet, but it's not. It looks, I saw it on the leather strap. It looks really sharp. It looks good.
They've done an absolute incredible job of this. It's got the Q Timex, but the Timex is almost written in a sort of a newish. It's their new font, but it's kind of vintagey. And then the Q is at the top. Again, this won't be Mecha Quartz because Timex, as far as I know, don't use Mecha Quartz because that's a Seiko technology. So this will be a traditional quartz watch.
Quartz chronograph,
you've got. It looks stunning that the subdials are large. I think this for $200 is. I think it's absolute steal. It's unbeatable. It's just perfect vintage.
What's the size? What's the size on wrist here? What do we?
So it's 40mm.
40 mil. Oh, jeez.
It's 13.5mm thick.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with it is that the bracelet or the bracelet flares out. So in fact, it's only the recess is only 18mm. So you're probably going to have to leave it on the strap that it comes with, because you're unlikely to get it onto a NATO, I would say. Because
they did right. Yeah. And so you can get those, you can get like a flared out leather strap. And actually, most people that, like most watch shops, will have a little notch tool, which I don't know if you've seen this. Yeah. So basically, they just take a 20 mil strap or a 22 mil strap, and they'll just like notch 2 millimeters out of both sides of it, and then put the spring bar back in, an 18 mil spring bar, and so that it'll line up and look good. But you just have to be brave and and have them cut a notch in it so that it'll fit. But the included leather strap looks good, but I think you're not completely limited in options here. Like it's not like an odd size, or it's not like a integrated bracelet thing where you can't find a watch strap for it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's in the Q-Timex range. But even last week they released a Waterbury at 41 millimeter chronograph, which is a very similar aesthetic, except it's got silver subdials, and that one's only $179.
Yeah.
Again, that has a real vintage aesthetic.
If you're a young, have no money watch collector and you want to get some street cred, this looks amazing. And if you're an old, long time watch collector and you just want something to throw on that's ready to go all the time, these the Waterburys are cool looking.
They've done a spectacular job of this. They also released another one called the Dive Chronograph, which is all silver, so silver dial, silver case, silver tachymeter, but the sub-dials are quite interesting. They're blue, a reddy orange, and then like a teal colour. Mm-hmm. And I posted it to one of our watch discussion groups, and it really divided opinion. I actually quite like the look of it.
But... Yeah, I can see why. So when I see this, it reminds me of the Zenith El Primero.
Okay,
that's what pops in my head. And so then I know what they were going for, but once I see those colors, I'm like, it's not, they're not the right colors, and it's like weird. If you approached it as a 1970s dive watch with fun colors on it, then I totally get it.
Yeah, so like Mido did with their decompression dial. That was a lot of color, but they definitely pulled it off very well.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a fun color. If you're into it, that's cool. But yeah, I mean, just like Sam is on the like main Timex page and has like the top 8 watches here, all 8 chronographs here, and it's like absolute hit. The colors are fun, absolute hit. Like just a great everyday wear. They got the Waterbury Weekender. They got the Pan Am, which is that's
Pan Am,
cool.
I'm sure it's still sold out. I think they sold out straight away. Partly because it came with an absolute awesome replica of the Pan Am pin badge. It came in a Pan Am box. They did it. It's definitely a cheeky nod to IWC, isn't it? But the fact that they used the Pan Am logo,
for sure. But again, I mean, like it's $219 on the website. On the website, how can you beat it? That's great.
Oh, you can't go wrong with that. I'm amazed that, because Pan Am still gets it's had a lot of love, hasn't it, for at least the last 10 years. They did that Pan Am show, didn't they? And I know there's a lot of Pan Am merchandise that you can still buy. I'm surprised that I think they got bought by American Airlines. I'm surprised somebody's not tried to spin them back up as a sister airline.
They did a I have to look. They did something in Los Angeles where they did like a restaurant lounge.
Yeah, well,
a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, that they had, where they had all the merch and they had the stewardesses dressed up in period correct. And I think, I mean, it definitely calls to that, like the golden age of air travel, when we weren't, when it wasn't a bus and we weren't packed in. I mean,
yeah, and I think I'm going to remember this wrong, but I think it might be JFK that actually has a terminal that is set up like TWA. And
right. They have the
TWA
original
hotel. Yeah, it's a hotel, TWA
Right.
hotel at JFK.
Yeah, because they made that terminal, and that terminal is like, it is 100% exactly what like peak like 60s 70s peak aviation style, and to the point where they were like, oh, we have to demolish this, and then someone was like, no, we have to save this and celebrate it.
Yeah, it was a very famous designer, wasn't it? I forget who it was that actually designed the terminal. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think that vintage aviation plays into those vintage pilot watches as well, where, the romance of a time where you perhaps needed a pilot's watch.
Yep. Where yeah, exactly. The golden age of, no, it's a cool throwback. I think it's a little it's certainly a fun take on those pilot watches from that era. It's great.
Yeah, and while we're talking about quartz watches, I made a comment on one of the live streams that I think G-Shock is definitely taking note of the Moonwatch hysteria, because they've been knocking out some really interesting design. They've really been taking a lot of, I wouldn't say risks, but they've definitely taken more chances, I think, and they have completely redesigned as of today the what we call the Cassiope. So there's a new Cassiope version, which is the GAB001, which is like, I don't know how you describe this. It looks more like a robot or like an anime version.
That's right. Yeah. I was gonna, like, I'm glad you said that, because it looks more like a robot helmet. Like this is more the like the SpaceX helmet kind of look with the sort of integrated.
Yeah, or a watch that they would have in a film that was made in the 80s or 90s that was predicting the future, like Demolition Man. This looks like a watch that they would have. It has that future world look that was the 80s and 90s was synonymous with.
Yeah.
Or like a Minority Report.
Or even I was just watching the thing on Total Recall.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, like a watch on Total Recall. And how that's it's funny, it was because it was like they were talking about it. It's like, it's such a weird, like, it was like, it was a not a crazy budget film, but it's regarded, like, when it came out to like weird reviews. Like, people were like, this movie, I don't understand this movie. And then 20 years later, it's such a cult film. I love it.
Oh yeah, because it was at a time when it was made at a time where it was very much like it was a heroes and villains, and there was always a happy ending. Whereas the ending of Total Recall, you don't know whether it's happy or not.
Right.
You don't know whether he imagined the whole thing or whether he did actually escape.
Ridley Scott kind of, they like, it could all be imagined. And then it was interesting. They were it was where they were first starting to do motion capture. So they did the X-ray scene where they're going through the X-ray. They tried to do motion capture, so early version of motion capture, and apparently they had to go back and just draw it all by hand, because they're like, we couldn't get any of it. Like Arnold came down and was supposed to be wearing like a black T-shirt with all the silver dots on it, which is, now we're completely, that's like standard. We know what that looks like, but we're talking a movie from early days, no digital stuff, and all model work, all original. So like, it's one of those things where like it kind of doesn't hold up, because it's a model, but at the same time it looks so like that nostalgic 80s sci-fi movie.
Oh yeah, and I would take especially the where he's wearing the helmet of the lady, and you can tell it's stop frame animation when it all separates out. I would take that any day over bad CGI.
Yeah,
I think because it shows that actually blood, sweat, and tears went into it, and that scene with the X-ray scene that you mentioned is just one of the most. It's got to be one of the most iconic scenes in an action film. Ever.
Yeah, which is that full page or full wall of X-ray that just like everybody's going through it. Yeah, no, they did just a fantastic job, and it was like so that came out in 1990. I was just checking. I called it an 80s sci-fi, but I was like, it was like right on the end.
Well, I guess they probably filmed it in the 80s. But I watched, I know we're going on to a film tangent here, but I watched Running Man again and I hadn't seen it for years. And what struck me is, it's still a great film, but as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this is actually only 2 studios. They've got the studio that's set up like the TV studio, and then the other studio that's set up where they're having to go through all these
challenges.
Tasks.
Yeah, the challenges are it was an interesting. That's an interesting adaptation. That's based on a Stephen King book. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I it's one of those things that I always forget, and then when somebody brings it up, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I do remember.
But also like. All the Stephen King fans are like, it's kind of a good thing that he had no control over it and didn't write the screenplay, and because it may not have been, because like Stephen King movies are like, 1 out of every 10, I would say, and maybe I'm being too harsh, and I apologize. I'm on my Stephen King fans, but I've read tons and tons of his stuff, and I feel like sometimes he gets involved and it'll turn into a TV series.
Yeah, and like The Shining did, like the actual real Shining that he wrote, his version of it that was supposed to be set in the Stanley Hotel in Fort Collins or the Rocky Mountain National Reserve. I've actually been to that hotel, and they talk about it because the film that was just so iconic, that the approach going up to the Stanley Hotel, but all of the interiors was in a completely different hotel.
Yeah.
And they did you're right, they did a 3-part miniseries that practically nobody's ever seen.
Right.
And they set that actually in the hotel.
Yeah. It's an interesting. We found, I had to dig for it. We found the Stand miniseries, which was on TV again in the mid 90s. And but I had to dig for that. Like nobody had that. Like I had to find that on the depths of the internet. So, but anyway.
Yeah, it's so funny watching films back, isn't it, from when you were a kid, or you remember them, I guess, from the 80s and 90s, and seeing them now. And in many respects, I think that a lot of CGI has been overdone. To death, really.
But back to Casio. I think that like, that aesthetic, I think they're nailing it. Is that like, what is that? Is that straight on that square? Wow.
Yeah,
give me a little Bell and Ross vibe there.
Well, yeah, and it's like a 2-part case construction, and they're knocking these out at $140, which is an absolute steal.
Yeah,
they've got one that definitely looks like it's straight out of Tron, which is
wow,
like a
yeah,
teal.
That's totally a Tron watch. Woo.
Yeah, I really quite like that. So it's Annie Digi, the same as the Casio.
This is like a translucent light teal. There are not light. I'd say just a translucent teal color that it's.
Yeah, and then they've got a grey and a sort of a grey red one, like a translucent grey case.
Is it running seconds in the left hand side, that dial, or is that dial do something else? I can't tell.
It's the mode selector.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, it's a future spaceship, so. Oh, there's the zoom in. Okay.
So that's the Bluetooth.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's got Bluetooth on it as well, which is for $140 is an absolute steal.
Yeah.
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 There you go.
And so this one, so then it tells you what Stargate symbol you have, and then down at the bottom it tells you what planet you're on. Okay, yeah, no, this is great. This is
Yeah, I quite like the way that they've done that mode selector, because it's square instead of being a pointer, and they've done like squares behind it, so that'll give an interesting look as it
looks like
through.
It, like so when you need to find the ejection handle. Perfect.
Yes, it does look like that, doesn't it? It looks like it's a caution. A caution thing, a quick pull handle. Yeah, well, there you go, guys. So there was probably we had to do a little bit more explaining there because we're on audio only, but I'll leave the links to the watches that we've talked about in the show notes. But they were the new Casio, the GAB001-1A. We talked about the new Seiko, the SSC 911. We talked about the Waterbury, the Pan Am on Timex, and then we talked about the Timex Q chronograph, and then we talked about the Watch Gecko, the Forzo, which is Forzo G1. So those were the chronographs. But yeah, really exciting week for Quartz chronographs and Quartz watches in general.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, as always, we really appreciate you listening. Chat to you next time on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks, guys. Bye.